author and journalist Svetlana Oss. Svetlana, thanks for commemorating the anniversary of this tragic event with us tonight on The Mind's Eye.
Thank you for having me. You are basically the first host brave enough to have me on air because my English is not perfect, of course. I remember that Coast to Coast AM invited me to talk. They were referred to me by someone who told them I was an expert. But when the editor found out I was not a native speaker, he said, sorry. So he chose to wait with the program for a couple of years before some of native authors came to the scene.
Well, you sound pretty good to me, and like I said before, your English is much better than my Russian. So, and our listeners are familiar. A lot of our guests are actually not from America, so they're used to a multitude of accents. So, we appreciate having you tonight.
Thank you.
Tell the listeners a little bit about your background.
I was born in Kazakhstan, I lived in Ukraine, and now I live in Russia. I am native Russian. I used to be a medical nurse when I was younger. Then I entered university and have become a journalist. I've worked for various Russian media, and now I am a full-time writer.
How did you get involved in investigating the Dalit Pass mystery?
In 2008, when I was working as a journalist, I came across some basic information about the Dyatlov Pass tragedy. I published an article about the event in the Moscow Times, and as far as I am aware, this was the first ever story written in English about the event, except for the Wikipedia article, of course. Since then, there have been books, TV documentaries, and even a movie about the Dyatlov Pass tragedy. I knew I would want to write a book of my own, but at the time it was not possible since the task is very time-consuming, so I accomplished this only in 2013.
For our unfamiliar listeners, although we went a little bit into it the last hour, with our previous guest, just summarize the events of what happened over those few days.
Well, there were 9 university students who went hiking in the Ural Mountains, and they were all experienced sportsmen, but later they were found all dead on the slope, and there were lots of mysterious circumstances around. It was really hard to explain what really happened. There were lots of rumors because KGB was present during the searches. There was some strange things like their clothes were contaminated with radioactivity. They suffered very strange injuries, basically like this. And since that time, no one during 50 years was able to solve the mystery,
There's a lot of weird and strange, what you so uncalled phenomena that occurred around it. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we go into your theory and from your book, Don't Go There, The Mystery of Dalit Pass. But you have such a unique perspective because you're from the area, or you're closer to it than most of our listeners. What is that area like, and have you ever personally visited?
But I made it there by train in 2013, and I worked there in the Dyatlov Foundation. This is a very remote area. If Hitler or Napoleon ever had an idea where they're going, they probably would reconsider their intention because it's taiga. Have you ever heard this word, taiga? It's just vast, enormous forest covered with snow. The snow can be as deep as a couple meters. Pretty harsh.
Sounds like it sounds pretty treacherous.
And
did you say you visited it, or?
I visited there in 2013, and I worked there in the Dyatlov Foundation with all the documents, the criminal case, the diaries, and I talked to some of the rescue team members. Yuri Yudin, the only survivor of this group. At the time, he lived in another city, so I talked with him on the phone. My trip there was in February, and as far as I remember, there was no expedition scheduled to the pass. I mean, I was in Yekaterinburg, but to go to the Dyatlov Pass, I was not brave enough to do it by myself. We all know that recently tourists visiting Dyatlov Pass in the Ural Mountains, they discovered the body of an independent hiker.
What is the news on that? Just for the listeners who do not know, tourists recently found a dead hiker, but at the time they didn't say what the cause of death was. Have you heard about what the cause of death was for that tourist?
It was said he died of hypothermia. We don't know much. I have to follow this news more. Actually, I know that it happened like 12 miles from the Dyatlov Pass, and that we know that he went there alone. You know, my book is called Don't Go There. I could add, don't go there by yourself.
It doesn't sound like an area that anyone should be hiking alone. That's one of the big rules is to never hike alone. So with this event that happened in 1959, what makes this really story so different and I guess intriguing than other similar stories of disappearances?
Strictly saying, it is not a story of disappearance because all the bodies were found. But what makes it different from any other tourist disaster story and any other world-famous enigmas is that it has many puzzling quirks and contradictions. There is usually at least one fact that completely ruins whatever theory one prefers. This excites people, it certainly excites me, but it is also about feeling. When you see the very beginning of this journey, all the pictures, when you read their diaries, you feel involved. You see how excited they were about this trip, and then you see that one of them, Yuri Yudin, he was still alive. So this is a very real story, and it is impossible to remain indifferent. Yuri Yudin, by the way, told me in an interview, if I only could ask God just one question, what happened to my friends? If I only could ask God.
What did Yuri Yudin, that's the hiker who went home earlier than the other ones.
Yeah.
What did he say about the events leading up to the days? Did he say that there was anything weird going on, something out of normal, thing maybe even ominous? What did he say?
He said they were completely happy to see each other because many of them were separated for some time. They lived in different places. Everyone was happy. They met each other. They couldn't get enough of their communication. They were anticipating a very interesting adventure.
Yeah, let's go into the theories of what people think happened. We won't go into all of them, but some of the ones that I think have some backing to. And then we'll talk about your book. We'll leave the second half for your book, Don't Go There, The Mystery of Dalit Pass. Let's start with the Russian people. Like we said before, you have a unique perspective because you're in that area a little closer geographically. What do the majority of the Russian people feel is the explanation for this event?
Well, it's not possible to say for all of them. There are almost 150 million people, but
right, the majority.
I can say many are into military theory. Many believe it was a cover-up. Recently, one theory became very popular, and it suggests that they were Americans. American spies, pretty popular today, and there is even a book of 600 pages. Also, there are natural theories like avalanche, infrasound. They are less popular but still exist. And, of course, all kinds of paranormal stuff.
What do they think the government was covering up?
They believe there were some secret trials of secret weapons, and the group probably deliberately was chosen to go to be used in experiments, and this is how they died. And later the authorities organized the rescue operation, which was fake. Well, I believe if it was so, the KGB, if they would never act this way, and they could do it much more simple. They could do just simple shooting of people, and then no one would ever see the bodies. They would come home in closed, or how to say, sealed coffins, and the information would be released like the students ate a poisoned deer meat, and it's really, how to say, dangerous to open the coffins. So I don't believe it.
Yeah, it really, if it was a government cover-up, it really wasn't with their MO. That wasn't their style. They would clean it up, like you said. I think why some people think that the government did it is because there was some conflicting reports between the search party and what is known as the official version.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the actual investigation itself?
Maybe I would say it has two parts. It had two parts. And the first one was really effective, and it was time when Ivanov was eager to know the truth. In the early days, he only spoke about one thing. The students did not die naturally. It was murder. Actually, he said that he was determined to find out who the murderer was. But once he was summoned to Moscow and told that the conclusion of his investigation must be freezing, he of course was discouraged, and his further investigation was just formality. But let me say one thing which I think is important. The government, of course, obstructed the investigation, but it was not because they knew something or they wanted to conceal something, the real cause. It was only because Ivanov himself reported to them that there were some strange things observed in the sky, like beaming globes, fireballs, and there was ban on these topics. As far as I remember, the American government did the same in 1947 with so-called Roswell incident. Mm-hmm. So it was, in our case, Ivanov later explained that he was told to make everything secret in order to prevent the off-chance or even random decryption of material related to rocket missile projects and nuclear technology, which was developing at that time. So the world was in the period of Cold War. All this secrecy was quite natural.
Political climate was obviously tense, and there was a lot of rocket testing going on and trying to cover that up so the other side wouldn't know the type of technology that they had and what they could possibly use. And one theory is that rockets could have possibly killed them, and that would explain the lights that they saw. Do you think that the lights that they saw were rockets, or rockets could have killed them?
If you want my opinion, I don't think so. Of course, official management of Cosmodrome, for instance, was asked many times whether it had fired or tested any rockets at the time of the incident. All the answers were negative, and they said that they can say for sure that the fall or crash of any rocket in the area is impossible. But also what I think is, okay, let me put it this way. We have some film of the students, and there are like 30 shots or frames of night sky. When zoomed up to many, many times, we saw these small flying objects in the sky. And the number of shots taken suggests that the whole event lasted at least 2 minutes. Because they were capable of taking these pictures, it implies that the objects were very far from them, like 180 miles, and thus they couldn't then be danger.
So most likely it had nothing to do with that, or it was at least not close to them. What do you think those lights were that were in the sky? Because they were reported by the hikers and the search party looking for the hikers.
One of the rescue team who took part in the rescue operations, he recalled that one night they also observed that phenomenon. And he said, we received an answer that this was a test of a new form of hydrogen fuel, and it was not life-threatening. So again, we see that there was no danger in them. Also, there is kind of weird explanation that it could be some celestial body and that it was similar in appearance to that which occurred at Chelyabinsk on February 15, 2013. Certain meteor showers occur during the exact same month and days every year, but this is unlikely. Anyway, whatever was observed in the sky, it was not dangerous.
It's not really relevant to what happened to their and their cause of death. That's one of the mysteries. I guess another mystery has to do with the official version. The first investigator, which you touched on before, he wrote that he refused to list the cause of death as exposure to freezing conditions. He then wrote instead, it was overwhelming force. What do you think this overwhelming force was, and what did the first investigator, I believe his name was Vladimir Kortev, what did he ever say was the overwhelming force later on in life?
Well, Kortev was in the investigation for only several days, and he can be credited for figuring out that the tent was cut from inside. He said in a couple of interviews he was inclined to believe that there were some rocket tests and the students found themselves in their own place at their own time.
When we'll go into your theory in a few moments, you disagree with that. Let's take a quick break. When we come back from the commercial, on the other side, we'll discuss Svetlana's theory on what happened that February 1959. We'll be right back on The Mind's Eye. We're back on The Mind's Eye with journalist Svetlana Oss. I know I teased right before the hour that we'll go into her theory, but let's wait a moment. I want to get her opinion on one of the most, I guess, infamous conclusions or theories about what happened. And that's Donnie Eichers, and we spoke in the last hour with Jason Zaski about it. What is your opinion on Donnie Eichers' theory from his book, Dead Mountain? And that's I believe it's called the Kármán Vortex Street, which is a wind phenomenon. Well, what's your opinion, Svetlana?
Well, let's say that infrasound theory is nothing new to Russia, and it was introduced by Vladimir Borzenkov more than 10 years ago. But anyway, I really respect Donnie for coming up with his theory, because it's pretty easy to just present basic facts, which everyone knows, and become an expert. But once you think hard and suggest a theory, you come under fire. I am with Eicher when it comes about radioactivity and beaming globes in the sky, and we talk about it later. But he, as a not native speaker, used interpreters, and I don't believe they interpreted or translated all the postmortems for him, because it's a hell of work to translate them into English, and it took me quite a while to do so and check it with medical professionals. For this reason, maybe He is not interested in this part of the criminal case. And thus, his infrasound theory offers no plausible or possible explanation to the trauma of the bodies found in the ravine. He explains that their injuries were because of falling upon the rocks below from the height of 24 feet. I don't know who gave him this information, and considering that he was there on the site, he saw that the ravine is 3 meters deep, which is 9 feet. This is essential. I asked modern expert Eduard Tumanov, who is known as the most reputed forensic pathologist in Russia, and he has carefully studied the autopsy reports and discharged any possibility of a drop trauma in the bodies. Look at the rib fractures which Luda Dubinina suffered. They were under her armpit, 4 ribs broken, and 9 ribs on the anterior part of her rib cage. Both sides, 5 ribs on her left side and 4 on her right side. And this is more like large boulders falling down on her rather than she falling upon the rocks below. What we see is a kind of compression or very powerful, strong blow. When people fall from above, they usually break the extremities, and nothing like that was observed. I mean, the reputed coroner said it was absolutely impossible. Actually, Boris Возрожденный, the original coroner, said the same. It was not possible. I can give you a couple more interesting things from... I believe that their footprints suggest that they were walking at regular strides, all together in parallel chains, and maybe even they were holding each other. Rescue party, we have testimonies from them. They got the impression that the group left the tent in an organized way. Yes, some of them were barefoot and stuff, but they were not running around in panic. Let me give you even more interesting testimony by Yuri Kaptelov. He was the one of the 2 who discovered the tent. So he was the first who saw the thing when it was not yet contaminated. He said, and Sharavin confirms that, he clearly saw a line of footprints, like if people were standing shoulder to shoulder and not walking, because it is easy to tell the footprints of walking person from those of standing people. Very interesting indeed. I believe they were standing, and it's very interesting testimony, which was perverted by the Discovery Channel when they interviewed Kaptelov and Sharavin. And when translating what Kaptelov said, they omitted one word, which is in Russian sounds like sherenga, and which means people standing in one row, like in army. But they omitted the word, and it turned out that Kaptelov saw a very strange, deep chain of prints of a Bigfoot. I don't know who is to be blamed, the interpreter or the director, but this is what they have done.
And supports your theory. So let's talk a little bit more about your investigation. I think what's great about, and it's again featured in Svetlana's book, Don't Go There, The Mystery of Dyatlov Pass. It really, of all the theories, it probably is the most plausible. During your investigation, you looked a lot into the medical evidence and the trauma and the trauma suffered by the students. What does that tell you about the reasons for their death?
Okay, let me say that the forensic pathologist Boris Возрожденный, he did what he could do at that time. And of course, he received lots of criticism for the job he did. For example, he didn't always differentiate the injuries received while the person was alive from those that may have occurred later. So the reports are also lack of many specific details and just replicate each other in their conclusive parts related to the cause of the death. Still, they are the only certain thing we have. Like it is said that the dead tell no lies. So the most, as I said, the very reputed forensic expert, Eduard Tumanov in Russia, he analyzed all the reports and he concluded the group didn't die of hypothermia. They all died of different injuries which were inflicted while the people were alive. Also, actually, only Igor Dyatlov died of hypothermia. The most severe injured bodies in the ravine, they suffered one impact blow, and it was very strong. What we can say, exactly what Lev Ivanov said, these people were killed.
What other evidence says that the hikers were attacked and a fight occurred, other than, I guess, varying degrees of some type of injury? What other evidence is there that they were attacked?
I need to add something about my conclusion. My conclusion is that people were murdered, but also those who killed them, they possessed some strength that was beyond an average human capacity. But what kind of power it was, I don't like to disclose here, because I like people to read my book and find out for themselves. Also, it is important that Ivanov stated that this force was acting selectively, and the approach was like, if you are still alive, then die. And we see that the best dressed people suffered the most injuries. So, to your second question, why I believe that the hikers were attacked and fight occurred. Well, let me say, when you see a guy with a swollen lip, a black eye, and fists scabbed over, what do you think may have happened to the guy? Do you think he panicked, ran, and fell down in a pit? Or maybe he was abducted by aliens? Yeah. Any of this could have happened, but the most realistic explanation is that there was a fight. Keep in mind, it's not me speculating. I'm just quoting coroners. They say, look at Doroshenko's face. I'm quoting here from the post-mortem. I translated all of them, as I said, and they're available with my book. The upper lip is swollen. Around the border of the upper lip, there is 2 centimeters dark hemorrhage. Krivanishchenko. In the middle part of the brow, there is a round contusion with a size of 0.3 centimeters. Very unlikely that these formed because of falling face down. Had it been the case, the graze wounds would have been observed also on his nose and above his eyebrows. There would have been more scratches on the forehead. What we see here is the result of a blow with a hard, blunt impactor at an acute angle, Tumanov said. The guys were punched in the face. What is more interesting is their fists. Look at Dyatlov, Zina, Rustem, Kriva. This is how they called Krivanishchenko. The knuckles on both hands were skinned and had scabbed over. The localization and shape of these graze wounds is different from those which occur from falling. Zina even had a mark of punching someone's teeth on her finger. She was a brave girl, you know. It implies that the attackers were visible for the group and that they had flesh.
Is there any way that the fight could have happened between the group itself?
I don't believe so.
And of course, that leads us to could have done it. But I know that that's the we don't want to give any spoilers here.
And I'm very thankful to one reader who, in his review, said that my book was the excellent application of Occam's razor. Mm-hmm. So,
there's so many different theories, and the problem is with every time there's a really good theory that makes a lot of sense, it doesn't explain all those weird and strange phenomena that occurred or the mysteries that still linger on. After reading your book, Svetlana, I think it definitely is the one that makes the most sense. Sense. And like you just said, it probably, I think it definitely would be the simplest explanation and could count as Occam's razor theory for the...
Well, thank you. Okay, we can say they fought aliens, Bigfoots, American spies who were parachuted from above, or military who happened to be in the area that had nothing to do with military tests, or that they got crazy and fight with each other, or we can simply assume that there must have been those who were at home in taiga, mountain men who knew everything about trekking in the woods and on the slopes, and whose abandoned shelter was found in a scaring proximity just half a mile above the tent. And these people, they were really territorial about their land.
And if you want to find out who exactly these mountain men, these territorial people are, you're going to have to check out Svetlana's book, Don't Go There, The Mystery of Dyatlov Pass.
I'm ready to explain this. In case we are not going to talk who they fight with when there was no signs of presence of the third party, I just can mention, I don't know how much time we have, there were lots of signs of the presence of the third party. There were traces, and here I am with Yuri Yudin, who said there were more than enough of them. Let's remember that all the prints on the slope, including those of the students, were preserved just in fragments. There is a radio message sent by the search team after the ski tracks were found. And I'm quoting here. It's a good trail, very easy to follow in the forest, but almost invisible in open places. The track goes to the ridge where, of course, it disappears due to wind and snow drifts. And next to the tent, the Dyatlov group had gone in and out of the tent, hardening the ground. Consequently, no tracks had been preserved next to the tent. Chernyshov, the guy who was a part of the rescue party, he said that footprints were visible only like 22 meters on the side. These footprints disappeared again, but we don't speculate that the students were flying, right? Or that they were not there. Just as the Dyatlov group didn't leave their prints everywhere, neither did the killers. Subsequently, the trails would have been destroyed by wind and snow. Also, right around the cedar, it was the main point, again, where the fight occurred. It was hard to distinguish between footprints because the snow around was trampled. Then there was a sheath, if I pronounce this correct, sheath, which no one could identify. And again, I am quoting from Chernyshov. It's possible to surmise that other people had since been by the fire. The trees near the fire had been cut with knives, but we found no knives with the bodies. Under the cedar, also, there was found a kind of fabric belt of dark color. No one knew what it was. An eyewitness said that it looked like one of the straps which the monks use for dragging loads, but not exactly the same. We cannot say that there were no presence of the third party.
I want to find out a couple of things. Maybe have there been any redacted or classified documents that have been released recently to even clarify it even more? So
this particular question is very interesting because I can say that there was no new documents released, but recently Sverdlovsk police, they are currently, as of January 2016, trying to track the owner of a gun, TOZ 34. This gun is made where I live. You know, Tula is a place where all the guns are produced. So I know what kind of gun is it. Well, this gun recently emerged in one crime, not related to the Dyatlov Pass. All gun owners had to be registered according to Soviet-era laws, and chances are that the police are soon on their way to find the owner of that gun. The gun could belong to one of the Dyatlov group attackers, I believe, because while they were investigating that, Oleg Vasnin is the guy from how to say it in English, Novoyavlensky Police Department. He managed to find a Russian old man, Anatoly Stepachkin, who owned the gun back in 1989. And this man said he got this gun from a Khanty hunter. Khanty is indigenous people of Russian North. They live there together with Mansi. So he said, I got this gun from the Khanty hunter. And he told the story, really exciting story, how he met with this hunter, how they drank vodka together and how they talk. I don't know if I can't tell you this story, but maybe you better read it in my book. Anyway, it turned out that this Khanty hunter, he actually participated in the attack, I believe so. And it can be that he's still alive. Of course, he's very old now, but if Stepachkin is alive, he also can be alive because the encounter took place in 1989 when he told him the story. And actually what he told him basically is almost the same what I suggested. I just made some mistake in how exactly it was, the whole thing was done. But I'm really kind of, how to say, proud of myself that I had a right guess.
It really is the most plausible, and the research alone speaks for it. I know you don't want to give away the who's who and how it all went down. We're towing the line here between giving information and not giving any spoilers. But I think maybe after all these years, we finally will actually get the truth and what happened. Do you think they're close to even making an arrest? What are your thoughts that we're actually going to find out what happened? Will this case get solved?
Well, it's interesting. I can say for sure that if they will succeed in tracking this gun, of course, all the gun owners had to be registered. But, you know, they were living in woods. Maybe there were some unregistered guns and stuff. But anyway, it's exciting. I will follow it.
it's hard to imagine that after all these years, 56 years, 57 years later, that this case could be solved.
Even if the case will be solved, people will never accept answers. It's like they don't want to lose this mystery. Mystery is enormous, and if someone will come and tell you it's solved, well, it means that no more research, no more guess, no more excitement. I tried to present this to some people on Facebook, and I felt like they didn't want to know this. They just want to keep researching. It's fine. It's fine with me. I just don't think everyone will be, happy if the mystery will be finally solved.
And when these type of tragic events that aren't solved come around, people's first thoughts and conclusions are around what their biases are. So if someone has a bias toward UFO, then they'll think it was a UFO. If someone has a bias toward the government, they'll think it's that. So that really is just this human nature. But with these type of events, what do you think is the most important lesson that we need to take away from this?
Don't go there. Well, seriously, I'm not here to give any lessons. I just believe that such thing like you intrude upon someone's territory, which is not yours, no good can come out of that.
Before I let you go, Svetlana, tell people where they can get the book, Don't Go There, The Mystery of the Dalit Pass.
Well, it's on the Amazon.
Where else would it be?
You can... no, I don't know. You can...
Okay, that was the communication. That was sarcasm.
Well, sorry, I'm not a native speaker. Sometimes I can't get the sarcasm really quick.
And I'm a New Yorker, and we are especially sarcastic, sometimes a little too dry of humor. But I highly recommend the book. Fascinating stuff. Great research, Svetlana. Thank you so much for giving us a piece of your time. You were fantastic.
Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure as well.
And just like Svetlana's book says, don't go there, but you, the listener, don't go anywhere, because we'll be right back with the Mind's Eye Show wrap-up after a word from our sponsor. I hope everybody enjoyed tonight's Dyatlov Pass Mystery doubleheader. Excellent work done by Jason Zaski of Failure Magazine, and of course, international investigative journalist Svetlana Oss. Big thanks to both, but particularly Svetlana, for giving us her first English-speaking language. Don't forget to check out her book and Jason's interview with Donnie. We have links up on our website, themindseyemedia.com. And we also have links up on our social media pages, facebook.com/mindseyeshow, and our Twitter handle is @mindseyeshow. And our next show, on Thursday, February 11th, we invite Laura London, host of the incredible podcast, Speaking of Jung. Laura stops by to converse about Carl Jung's exploration into occult topics like Gnosticism, alchemy, UFOs, quantum physics. We'll even dive into Jung's published dissertation on the psychology and pathology of so-called occult phenomena, in which he personally analyzed the seances of a 15-year-old medium. Join me then. Big thanks, of course, to you, the listener. None of this would be possible without you. I'm your host, Brian Turnov. For Z Talk Radio, this is The Mind's Eye.